because at times when you are called to serve, you follow your calling without really taking a step back to kind of reflect on the journey. So I think every time one gets introduced, they get amazed with, yo, okay, Konja, this is all, these are the things that I've done, so thanks for that reminder. The other thing that I just wanted to touch on before we get into it is Uguti, um, as you correctly said, Prof, we learn from each other. So I'm in no way an authority or the only authority on this topic. And all I'll be doing is just sharing my views based on the experience that I've had. The experience that I've had, the Prof has touched on. Um, so it's really through, the consulting work that I've done with various clients, where I've spent a lot of time with the C-suites, getting to understand what keeps them up at night. Um, and in my consulting role, excuse me, my responsibility is always to be aware of what's happening in the world and see things that potentially my clients don't see. And from my family perspective, excuse me, we also have quite a lot of businesses that we run, and again, I have a lot of insights there through the acquisitions that we've been doing and all the businesses that we've been doing. So, and then finally through Gibbs as well, I do teach at Gibbs. I am one of the guest speakers and the part-time lecturers on the MBA program, and I've just recently started a business development program that I teach to sales teams via Gibbs. So my views will be coming from that perspective. I do have one slide that I thought I was going to share, but I haven't used Zoom in forever. So in the interest of not wanting to be embarrassed by this, it's just three quotes that I believe will be able to remember. And these are the quotes that I'm going to, be anchoring my delivery around. The first one was made by Leonard Ravenhill, who says that the opportunity of a lifetime needs to be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity. The opportunity of a lifetime needs to be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity. Too many times we pray for opportunities, and God, brings those opportunities, and at times brings them in ways that we didn't expect. And then we delay and we procrastinate, and we said, no, I'll get to it next week, and so on. And when you do get to it, the lifetime of that opportunity has passed. So tonight, who knows, could be our opportunity of a lifetime to learn something new, to get an idea, or to get confidence around an existing idea that we had. And so effectively, it's about us being open-minded to all opportunities that may present themselves to us. The second one was by Alvin Toffler, who says, the illiterate of the 21st century are not only those who can't read and write, but it's also those who can't learn, unlearn, and relearn. And again, I always get comforted or get comfort when I do such talks and the host quotes something that I was going to say as if we had planned this, because you would have heard Prof also talking about learning and unlearning in his opening delivery. So it tells me that, this session is going to be blessed, and there's going to be a lot of alignment between us. And then the third quote was from Theodore Roosevelt, a former president of the United States. He wrote a piece called Citizenship in the Republic. And one of the themes of that piece was the man in the arena. And effectively, he says that for citizens, it's important for citizens to be active, so active citizenry. And for you to be active, you have to be in the arena. Because at times we complain and we point fingers and we are couch critics, but we actually don't get into the arena to solve the problem. And the arena could be various things, depending on what space you are in. So the three quotes I ask that may they be the foundation of what we speak about. So, whatever points I make, ask yourself, is Manqoba challenging me to unlearn or relearn something, or is he challenging me to, go and solve a problem in my area, in my company, in my household? Let me go and be in the arena. Or is he, providing an opportunity that I hadn't thought about for me to go and act on, or an opportunity that I had thought about already and just hadn't acted on it, and now I need to go act on it. I also, as I said, I teach MBA students at Gibbs, and there's always the what you might call it, the thinking that one needs to provide frameworks and definitions and all these big things. And I thought, tonight let's just have a conversation and really just talk from a life perspective, and I want to touch on different topics that we would have all seen, and then at the end kind of tie it back towards leadership. So I won't be using any slides or 2 or 3 by 3 diagrams or anything to that effect. And questions, I think we'll take questions at the end. I shouldn't speak for too long. So please, if you have any questions or comments, just jot them down, and we will take those at the end. So just the high level summary of where we are as a country, as South Africa. Again, some of these things I'm sure most of us know. In the world, out of the top 20 fastest growing economies, 12 of those economies, or 12 of those countries, are from Africa. 12 of the 20 fastest growing economies are from Africa. But you find that in those 12, South Africa is not there. We are one of the worst performing from a economic growth perspective. Sure, we are one of the biggest from a kind of overall GDP perspective, but from an economic growth perspective, we are certainly one of the poorest. So our country is not growing. I mean, we're being beaten by countries like South Sudan, which is growing at 27%, and we are only growing at 1.5%. And there's various reasons why we're not growing: infrastructure, unemployment, and the works that all of us know about the global economic situation and the uncertainties. All of those things are contributing towards our lack of economic growth. And I argue also a lack of conscious leadership is contributing towards our lack of growth as a country. Now, when I engage with my clients, I always challenge them to say, you know, they we can look at all the research and the data and GDP numbers and all of that, which is important information. But where I always just look is the banks. The banks tend to know what's going on in a country, and tend to know what's going to happen in a country, because all of our money is in the banks, obviously outside of the informal market. So when you look at where the banks are going, and the decisions that banks are doing or taking, it tends to kind of give you a view of where kind of the country is. And so when I looked at the top 4 banks, I realized that they are sitting on over a trillion rand in reserves that the banks are not investing. And so for me, it tells you a lot about how the banks view the economy, how the banks, financial institutions view where we are as a country and where we're going. If they're sitting on so much money, where we know that we actually need investment in infrastructure and all these other things to grow our economy. The money is there, but it's sitting in the banks, and the banks are not kind of releasing the money. So they're creating what we call is a liquidity crunch by sitting on this money. And then what you then find is that as individuals, we then end up taking more loans, because the economy is not growing enough, our salaries are not growing quickly enough, the costs are growing faster than our revenues, and so we are unable to make ends meet. And so we end up seeking other ways, and you find that the loan applications in the banks have increased dramatically. Some are even acquiring loans to pay off another loan, which is definitely not constructive and productive. And it just shows where we are as a country. I'm involved in the football industry. My family owns Amazulu Football Club. And what we have seen there, even in our industry, not so long ago, there was a view that no, we can't allow betting companies in football. It's not good for the country and so on. And if you follow football, you now know that Betway sponsors the whole league. from a few years ago where we were saying we're not even going to allow a sponsor to sponsor a team. Now Betway sponsors the whole league. You look at Hollywood Bets, they now run the Durban July, which used to be run by Vodacom for such a long time. So betting companies are becoming more and more prominent, because they're making more and more money, because people are, you know, resorting to betting to try and fill the gaps that they have from an income perspective. So some will go and get loans, some will use the little that they have to go and actually bet with the hope that they're gonna, you know, get returns back. If you look also on the insurance side, you're finding that the insurance claims are increasing. They're on an all-time high. And some of the claims, you find that they are fraudulent claims because, if you've insured a watch, you've insured a ring, people are now claiming that these watches and rings are lost so that they can, get the money from the insurer as a way, for them to get some relief. So as a country, we are really struggling, financially, and it's all a factor of the lack of economic growth that has been the case for many years. You then look at the alcohol industry. They are booming. They're making so much money because, again, others are now resorting to alcohol. Where you're realizing, yes, I can't pay my rent. I might as well just drink this money and, pray that my problems won't go away. So from a liquor industry perspective, their numbers are on an all-time high. I even saw a stat that said in South Africa, I think we drink, I think it was the champagne or something, but and it wasn't beer. It was one of these higher end alcohol brands that we drink the most in the world of that whatever particular brand. I think it was a champagne brand. So you're finding that people are resorting a lot more to alcohol and other substances to relieve the stress that they have and the challenges that they have. You're finding that there's a rise again in GBV, gender-based violence, because those who were seen or are still seen as providers are unable to provide anymore, and they are under stressed, and then they taking it out on family members, their wives, their partners, their kids, and so on, which is not healthy and is not the right way to go. Bringing it back to corporates and to businesses, you're finding that working cycles are being challenged. So you have a product that you sell, your what are they, your debtors are not paying you on time anymore because they also under the crunch, and they don't have the cash flow that they used to have before. So they're taking longer to pay you, and you still have your creditors that you need to pay. So if you pay your creditors on time, but your receipts, your revenue is coming later on, then it's causing you to have a cash flow issue, and then ultimately you're finding that the M&A activity is up, the mergers and acquisitions, because companies just don't have enough cash flow to sustain themselves. They go to the banks to ask for the loans. As I've said, the banks are not giving off or giving out as many loans as they used to be. So, these companies are now being liquidated, or you're now just selling to a company that does have the reserves and the resources, purely because you just can't manage to pay salaries and to keep your business afloat. So that's how all of these things kind of come together. And at times, we tend to focus on our sphere of control and sphere of influence where kind of we work, and we don't look at all these other changes and how actually all of these things come together, and all of these are linked to the lack of economic growth as a country. You look at clothing retailers. I mean, how many clothing retailers are closing down? Total Sports, Cross Trainer, stores that have been there forever. You're finding that they're closing a lot of their branches because they are unable to sustain the overheads that they have, but also because the customers are not coming as much because the customers don't have the money to be buying sneakers every month as it used to be the case. Food retailers seem to be doing well, in this context, but again, the more kind of, how do I put it? So like the food retailers, your chicken, KFC, chicken, the fast food joints are doing a lot better than kind of the higher end um, fine dining restaurants, because again you're finding that the cost of food from a fine dining perspective is a lot higher, and then lot less people are able to go to those restaurants. And then similarly, those who sell fish and salmon and so on, or tomahawks, to these fine dining restaurants, they also seeing their revenues decrease because of the decrease in the demand. You then look at from a tourism perspective. I come from KZN, Gwelga Banana, and you find when I grew up, certainly KZN was way ahead of Cape Town or the Western Cape from a tourism perspective. Today the numbers are chalk and cheese. It's the total opposite, and the Western Cape is absolutely annihilating KZN. And one would think, or one tends to, not see the linkage between the political realm and how kind of that province is being run and the impacts that has on business. And I think the KZN versus Western Cape comparison is quite a good comparison for you or for us to see really what the impact of leadership, um how what that impact of leadership is on us, on the ground, on tourism and other just businesses that are in the area, just the whole economy, if you just compare Cape Town to KZN. I then engaged with a few of my mates who are in the funding space, and the numbers are clear that if you want to build a hotel in Cape Town, you almost want to get the funding immediately. In fact, you want to have lots of funders wanting to fund you. But there you want to build that hotel or that hospitality spot in KZN, you have to go through so many hoops because of the lack of confidence in KZN, and I argue it's largely due to the political situation in KZN. So, I always look at the intersection between politics, business, and society. And I find that when I engage with colleagues, we tend to look at it in isolation. When we're talking politics, we're talking politics. When we're talking business, we're talking business. When we're talking civil society, we're talking civil society alone. But I argue that all these things are intertwined and interlinked, as I've tried to show and to express in some of the examples that I was giving. We then also look at our water and electricity supply, and how that impacts investment into the country. So I started off by saying we need more investment. Our economic growth is low, but again, it becomes a barrier for investors if they don't have consistency or sustainable electricity, sustainable energy, from a water supply as well. We don't have in certain areas sustainable water supply. So all of that, impacts us as individuals in our households, impacts us in our businesses, it impacts productivity, it impacts how much, how efficient we are as businesses, and ultimately how we lead as leaders, or how or where we spend most of our time as leaders. Whereas before we'd be spending more of our time on strategy and identifying how we can innovate and improve our products and services and solutions. Now we're spending more time on trying to figure out, trying to solve for electricity, for water and so on, which is not the most efficient use of our time. So again, from a leader perspective, the capabilities that are required 5 to 10 years ago are no longer the same capabilities, because now we're having to solve for different things and spend our time on in different areas. You look at security as well, which is another hindrance to investment in certain provinces. Um, and you look at the changes, fortunately, that are happening now, and I'll use my home province again, KZN, and you look at General Mkwanazi with the changes that he's trying to bring. It is bringing back some level of confidence in the province, but it's still a very long way to go. You've got now construction mafias and people that who just come and demand 30% of your project, when they're not even going to do anything. And those people for the longest time got away with what they were doing because there was no political will to fight them. And I argue that the GNU, and mind you, it's in my research, it's not really the GNU, because the research shows that GNU is when all of the political parties form part of government, or at least the majority of the political parties form part of government. So we know that, that together the EFF and the MK would form part of, or would fall within the definition of the majority of the biggest parties, but they're not part of the GNU. So it's actually really a grand coalition, not really a GNU, but I digress. That's not my my topic for tonight. So when you look at the GNU, there certainly have been some positives that have come out of the GNU. You're finding that a lot of, in certain areas, decisions are now being made quicker. Decisions are now being made more fairly, and not just kind of to predestined people who would have those contracts, green fields, and or evergreen and to perpetuity. So I'm finding, just from my observations and conversations, that there are certainly certain areas where the GNU has assisted in ensuring that more decisions are made quickly, correctly, and you're finding that our cities are a lot more cleaner, and there's just a lot of progress that we've seen. I'm also finding, though, that those decisions are happening in areas that are not as contentious. So I use the example of the cities being clean. Durban CBD, Joburg CBD used to be, very dirty for a lot of years. And I think all parties kind of agree that it's the right thing to do to have, the cities clean. And so you're finding that they're kind of working together to make sure that that happens. But there are areas where, from a policy perspective, the parties are not aligned, and there's big differences in how different parties are looking at those certain policies, and then you're finding that decisions are not being made there because of these political differences. And to that end, us as the laymen on the ground are suffering because, say, hypothetically, it was a road or a bridge that's meant to be built, that is going to assist in, from a logistical perspective, to bring coal from province A to province B, or whatever the case is, and really create a vibrant economy. And you're finding that those big decisions are not being made because of the differences between the political parties, and it's ultimately impacting us as a society. And then finally, we also are seeing a massive, massive, massive influence from AI. When the meeting started, you saw that the notes are being taken by AI. I mean, not so long ago, Prof probably would have had to have an assistant to just take the minutes, or he would have had to take the minutes himself, which would have deterred him from really engaging and listening properly into the conversation, because it's trying to multitask and write notes. So something as simple as that um, shows really the importance of AI. I was speaking this morning or this afternoon to one of my mentors, the founder of Gibbs Business School, Prof Nick Benedel. He's also a business partner of mine, and he was saying that he doesn't like writing. So a lot of colleagues have come to him and said, Prof, we need to write your story, your book, da 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 da. And he's just been pushing them away. Some will say, they want opinion pieces from them, and he would just be like, I actually don't like writing. This past weekend, he got to learn that actually on ChatGPT, there's that microphone option where you can actually press that and record yourself. It then transcribes it into like written format. You then put that on a I think it's called Perplexity, which is another app, and that app then takes that transcribed kind of version, and then gets references that support what you were saying, and then automatically it's now become an academic paper that you can submit for discussion. And within 20 to 30 minutes, Prof can now have an academic paper or submission that he can have, whereas before it would have taken him hours, if not days, to do that. Again, showing the importance of AI. The other day, I saw one of I can't remember if it was the Department of, probably was Home Affairs, I think, because it was talking about the borders and how we now manning our borders using drones in the country to prevent illegal immigrants. Again, that's the use of AI, looking at data, and ensuring that you are able to make more informed decisions. In this consulting space that I come from, we used to have a pyramid where the pyramid has got three layers, right? So the bottom layer is the longest layer, the middle layer is kind of the second, and then the top layer triangle is the smallest layer. Previously, capturing used or processing used to take the longest time. So that are the lowest layer. So it's capturing of invoices, or whatever it is, just capturing was the thing or the item that took the most amount of time from individuals. The second layer was then once you've captured all of this information, you now need to do recons. So the recons and the kind of the checking was the one that took the second amount of time. And then if you're lucky, you want to have the small, triangle at the top, to then really evaluate, okay, so now that I've got this recon, what does this mean? The insights. What insights am I drawing from this? Um, what decisions can I now make on the back of this information? So for the longest time, that's kind of how the pyramid used to work. With AI and new technologies now, we're now shifting and turning the pyramid upside down. The capturing is actually taking the least amount of time. We're then spending a lot more time um, on the kind of the reconciliation part, but the most amount of time we're spending now on the insights. Some of my clients on the finance side would have their management accounts by workday 12 or workday 16. I mean, the month is gone already. Now we are able to have the management reports by workday 2 or workday 3. So meaning, for May, or let's say for May, if we want to now have management reports for May, previously you'd only have those by the 16th of June. So it's almost too late to use that information to make decisions for June because that month is gone already. Half the month is gone. Now, for May, the management accounts, you can have them by the 3rd of June. So if there's something that's off, you can still, make changes and still kind of benefit through those changes for the whole of June because you're able to make those decisions a lot quicker. So that's really some of the benefits of technology and AI and how it's improving, how businesses are being run. And obviously, with now us working remotely as well and hybrid structures, this technology is also quite important. So it's really important for us to spend as much time trying to understand this technology and then take a step back and say, for us as leaders, how is this technology going to assist us, to get to different levels that we never even thought we could get to, because now the growth is no longer pedestrian, it's exponential with the assistance of with the assistance of technology. So what does this mean for us? So just bringing it back, I have a few points that I think we can mull over, and then I'll be done, and then we'll open up for Q&A. We obviously require the economy to grow quickly, or quicker than what it is. And for that to happen, it's really a whole lot of things, decision making. We need quick decision making. We need accurate decision making. We need lots of investments in infrastructure. We need to see how we, change kind of the economy from an employment perspective. Because I mean, we would have seen that the unemployment and numbers are up again, which is, it's really a ticking time bomb where half the youth, half of those who are below the age of 25 are unemployed. What do we think is going to happen? Do we just think it's going to go away, or at some point there's going to be another unrest, led by the youth, if we as leaders are not doing anything about it? One of the things that I'm involved in, I've realized that a lot of the corporates and a lot of businesses prioritize university graduates. And even there, they have a particular ranking. If you've come from this particular university, you're almost guaranteed a job. And if you come from another university, things are going to be a lot tougher for you. Then it's the technicons that are kind of next in line. But the TVET colleges are almost nowhere. If you studied at TVET college, it's almost impossible for you to get a job. So I've positioned with the Department of Higher Education that I, will create a work readiness and job placement program to ensure that we get the TVET graduates ready for employment, but to also then leverage my corporate relations and my corporate clients to be able to take these kids in and give them work experience and commit to giving some of them full-time and permanent employment. Because I do think if you look at companies like Malaysia, Germany, China, Netherlands, a lot of their economy is built around the TVET space. And in South Africa, we look down on the TVET space. But almost every day of our lives, we engage with skill sets that have come from the TVETs, from a vocational, whether it's hospitality, whether it's restaurants, whether it's you went to do your hair, cut your hair, whether it's engineering, all these skill sets. You look at things around appliances around your house. A lot of those were built by people that studied at TVET colleges. But as corporates, for whatever reason, we just look down upon students from the TVETs, and I feel that we can build a whole new economy around that, because again, we've seen that the economies that we have currently are saturated, so we need to build some new economies. And I argue that the TVET space and the vocational space could be the place that we need to look as leaders. I in my the football club that I'm part of, I started Amazulu Business College, as Prof mentioned, and part of what we challenge them is to say they need to go study at the nearest TVET college, because soccer players train 3 to 4 hours a day, so they've got really the rest of the day all to themselves. We challenge them to study at a TVET college. Some of them have got a passion for cooking, so go and study and do a culinary course, and get your certificate, and you can come back. When your career is about to end, who knows? You could be the one cooking the food for the club. Because you are a former player, the nutrition that's required, so you're the right person to be the one to cook. But we're also not going to just put you on because you're a former player. You need to put in the work, get the qualifications. The funniest one was when I said to them they must go and study plumbing courses. You can imagine footballers who believe that they are celebrities. So I'm called Japan at Amazulu, and it's a story for another day. So they say, hey, but Japan, no ways. Imagine us, being plumbers. And I said, no, boys, it's not about necessarily you being a plumber. And firstly, there's nothing wrong with being a plumber. But you need to study the course and understand what goes on there. And then, because you guys earn a lot of money, you have the capital, you can start your own plumbing business and employ people. Then all of a sudden you're an employer. So post your career, you're not one of these statistics that football players post their career, they broke. But no one's gonna pull wool over you or run rings around you, because you've studied and you actually understand what plumbing is about. And they're like, oh, okay, no, we didn't think about it that way. So those are some of the things that we're doing at Amazulu. And then I challenge you as well to say, in your space, just go and research what types of skill sets come from TVETs. Because I won't lie, even I didn't know up until I started getting involved this year. And then it was really a shock for me to realize how many skill sets come from the TVET colleges. And let's collaborate, corporates with the TVETs, universities and the TVETs. Let's find new ways, guys, of just taking this country forward and not doing the norm. I study at Gibbs. I mean, I teach at Gibbs, as I said. Prof teaches at Wits. I argue that a few years ago, if Prof had asked, or if someone from Wits had asked someone from Gibbs, the Gibbs person would have said, no, I can't speak on this platform because I'm gonna be giving the Wits guy, I'm gonna be making them look good. Now I'm finding that more and more of us are open to collaborations, more and more of us are open to working together. And I say, let's continue in that vein and see how we can, partner with each other, because really 1 plus 1 will equal 10. Towards the end, I just want to see if I'm not missing out anything. The other big thing, I'm involved in a project for a listed company, and it's a wellness project. So looking at wellness for their executives, mental wellness. And then once we're done with the executives, we want to roll it down throughout the business. And their slogan is zero harm, and they're involved in the mining space. And before, zero harm meant no fatalities, no one dying, and so on. And now they've changed the zero harm to saying no one must be even harmed mentally. because before they weren't measuring that matrix. They were just measuring how many people have passed away on the mine, and they report on that. Now it's about, making sure that in as much as possible, everyone feels safe at work, creating those safe spaces, making sure that everyone is, in the right mental states, mental capacity for them to show up in the best version of themselves. And I then got roped into this. I was like, but why are you bringing me in? I know nothing about wellness. And they said, no, 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 we're bringing you in for your facilitation kind of experience and expertise, because you will be the one that's able to kind of get out information, from the colleagues and get them comfortable. Sure, you'll be working with a clinical psychologist for all the technical stuff, but already, it's showing a collaboration that I certainly did not think would happen. I didn't think I'd be working on a wellness project. And so what I've also done in the business development course that I run at Gibbs, I've now included wellness myself as a topic. So I bring in an expert to speak about wellness, because when you then look at the sales teams, a lot of these teams make most of their money on commission. So you then find that it's a doggy dog world. They taking each other's clients and stealing each other's clients, and they all work for the same company because they don't feel that they're in a safe space. And so I'm challenging, the corporates that I work with, to look at this thing holistically. Look at how, those salespeople's packages are structured. HR needs to get involved and see what kind of the disadvantages of kind of a higher commission structure are, and then put in, the foundation of the cushions to make sure that, sure, you get the best out of people, you incentivize them, but you're also not creating a culture that is unhealthy, that, will make people lose their minds, and people, not look forward to go to work. So again, have you thought of, as a leader, have you thought of how you can improve and increase the safe space for your colleagues, whether it's your people at your level, whether it's, the juniors, because at times the juniors are the ones that are struggling, because they're overwhelmed with the requirements of the working world. Or you find that it's the senior people. They say it's lonely at the top. And companies will have all these brilliant programs to support junior staff members, and the execs are left, to their own devices, and you find they are the ones that are actually taking their lives, because they're not in the right spaces, and they just feel there's just too much from a family perspective, from a work perspective, on their shoulders. And so the last point, and I've mentioned it already, and I just want to re-emphasize it. Really, 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 really spend as much time as you can using and understanding these technologies. We all have these smartphones. They can do such great things, but most of us just use it for WhatsApp, social media, and calling. Some people don't have laptops, they don't have iPads, they actually work from their phones. And that's how advanced these phones are. ChatGPT I've mentioned, and all sorts of things. So, and I know some people feel, I used to feel like this at the beginning when ChatGPT arrived, that I'm almost cheating. Like if I'm asked to present a report or a view on something, and I won't go on ChatGPT because that's wrong. I must use my own thinking and share my own views. And really, why do you want to spend 10 hours on something when you could, spend 10 minutes on it? But the key and the important thing is that we need to use it responsibly. So don't regurgitate something from ChatGPT and present it as your own work, because then that's not correct, right? Use it as a guide to frame your thinking, but still make sure that that paper that you deliver, or that talk that you deliver, or that solution that you deliver still has your flavor in, and you're not just regurgitating what ChatGPT is doing. From an AI perspective, some people are using it in a naughty way and creating, me speaking. Someone could be recording me right now, and then they change my voice, and I'm now saying controversial things, but you can see it's me, and it's really, Manqoba. But what's coming out of my mouth in that video that they've recorded is actually not what I was saying. And such things are very difficult to pick up, and the authenticity of the video. So again, it's really important for us to also be aware of fake news and really interrogate things, and not just get something in a WhatsApp group and just repost it because again, as leaders, we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and really interrogate things and not just share every piece of information that we get, because this is people's lives at times that we are talking about, and we shouldn't be, part of um, spoiling people's lives, or harming people's lives and brands, and reputations by sharing information that we haven't interrogated. With that being said, I did say I'm going to speak just for about 40 minutes. I think it's 40 minutes on the dot. And so I'll be open to questions and comments. As I said, I try to just keep it lighthearted, use different types of examples, and not make it too, business school like, and too lecture like. But really, if there's anything that you would have liked me to touch on that I didn't touch on, happy for you to ask me about it, and then I'll respond. Over to you, Prof.
Wow, thank you. Thank you very much, Manzini. Very insightful, very informative, very thought-provoking. Thank you so much, my brother. Indeed, at this level, frameworks and models and all those things, these people have those. So what really I guess, obviously having led this platform for a couple of years, I know that what we have done tonight, this is what these people would love, because coming here with big things, as I'm saying, that we've got academics here who are really used to those models and frameworks, and we've got executives, yeah, and yeah. So thank you so much, Manzini. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We've got a very tight, we've got a time constraint tonight, but I'll really respect you as I always do. For anyone who would like to ask a question now, is that time just to, and that we're going to be as quick and brief as possible so that Manzini will answer, and then after that we'll release him. As you said, that he's got something else as well. I see a hand there from Piwe. Madlogov, over to sir.
Thank you very much, Prof, for the opportunity. I just want to ask Manzini as to which approach or which position should we take in terms of our alignment internationally, and which side should we take in terms of attracting foreign direct investment in order to industrialize the country and grow the economy. Thank you very much, Prof.
Thank you,
Eh,
sir. Thank you very much. Over to you, Manzini.
Madlogo, I intentionally didn't touch on geopolitics. Um, I am not a scholar in geopolitics, but I mean, as an academic myself, I've got my views, and 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 if you'll allow me, and I'm gonna sit on the fence on this one, but I'll give you both sides. Um, I what is a fact is that, as a country, we are a tiny, 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 tiny piece in the whole world, and we need to remember that, right? Our leaders need to remember that. So in the things that they say, even if they may not agree with the Trump administration as an example, but we also need to be very careful how we manage those engagements. But on the flip side, we also, mustn't allow ourselves to be tramped over, and being treated as, the stepchild, and just, reliance on aid. There's a difference between aid and investment. If countries are wanting to invest in us, different story. But if they're just throwing aid at us and thinking they're going to hold us at ransom because of that aid, I wouldn't be in support of that. Now, one of the quotes I used when I'm at Lagov at the beginning is about learning, unlearning, and relearning, and the one of opportunity of a lifetime. The other part of my brain says perhaps this is an opportunity of a lifetime for the world to rebase and to reset, you know, for the world order to change from the west to the east. And I mean, if you look at what's happened between the USA and China, where USA played their hand and China didn't back down, and USA and now the Trump administration has now reversed all of those tariffs, it seems to be showing us that, there's a change in the world, in the new world order. Would that be a good or bad thing for us? Only time will tell. So I think when I'm at Lvova, I know I'm not going to give you a direct answer, but really, as leaders, our leaders in this country ought to have a proper grand strategy. I don't even know if we have a strategy as a country. I know we have the NDP, which was done over a decade ago. I don't even think anyone goes back to that document. From what I see, it seems like our leaders are very reactive. So if we had a grand strategy as a country, and we are clear where our growth areas are, we are clear where our competitive advantage is, and then we do the mapping to say, okay, if this is our competitive edge, competitive advantage, this is where our growth is going to come from. Who are the people that we should align ourselves the best with? And I think our answer will come from there. But I don't know enough to be able to give an answer right now, Matlo.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Manzini, you've put it so eloquently and lucid that it seems like we are stressed society. We are angry society, especially and I'm so sorry to say this, especially the black child, the black man, if I just say that. The post 94 black man, it's got so much thing, and that's why, as you said, that you're resorting to alcohol and alcohol drinkers, and that obviously lead to GBVs, and there's so many things that are happening. But also you just saw correct, the proliferation of these gambling, the betting companies. Now, with a little thing that someone has would go and think that maybe even if it's unemployed, think that maybe if I put this, I'll get more. And then you put there to lose everything. You go home with this stress, with this anger. You know, yeah, what are your thoughts? I mean, really, obviously, I know that it's a big question that needs the whole society to look into. I did argue in my other areas or platforms that I'm involved in when the national dialogue, which was really initiated and proposed by former President Thabo Mbeki, when it was moved to the presidency or to government, I remember, probably I must just check about videos, but in the TV interviews, videos, when I argued and say, you are not going to see this thing happening. Because we have moved now from, if really it was led by maybe Begi Foundation, or all foundations came together, formed a task group or task team to push this national dialogue, we would have had the national dialogue long ago. But now it was given to government, and that's where we are now. And things that should have been discussed by society, by the whole nation, and now has not taken place because of the lethargy and because of what is happening in that government. Thoughts there, Manzini?
No, 100%, Prof. 100%. I love, and I used it earlier on, the terms sphere of control and sphere of influence, right? And then in my other business, the Get Ready Skills, the mentorship program, our slogan is lifting as we rise. So I always like to use those terms to say, sure, the problem may look massive, but just look within your sphere of control, your direct and immediate family, those who look up to you, those you can influence. Do your bit to impact those, whether it's paying for school fees, whether it's getting, assisting a kid in your community to get a bursary, da 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 da. We need to start individually before the foundations and so on. Prof, as an individual, look within your sphere of control and influence and see how you can contribute to someone. Because then if you picture, that chain where as you rise up, you lifting someone else, then all of a sudden we have a whole movement. And in investments, they say someone who started investing, I'll make an example, 100 rand 20 years ago, and they invest 100 rand a month, and you start 15 years post, or you even start now 20 years later, and you're investing 10,000 rand a month, you probably, man, the overall value, you're not going to catch up to that person, even though you're investing a lot more than them. So the momentum is quite important. We start small, we get the momentum, we get the exponential growth in whatever things that we're doing, and then next thing, as a society, we're in a better space that we are in. I see that happening in the security space, where you're now having a lot more, they call them CPFs, community policing forums, where the community has said, look, we're done complaining about SAPS. Sure, they are corrupt. Some of them are corrupt, this and that, da, 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 da. But let's take matters into our own hands. We need to protect our families. This is where the buck stops. We're going to create these CPFs, and they seem to be very, very successful. So I think really it's about us, and again, we can't be everything to everyone. Look at where you've got influence and control, pick a lane, do your bit, others will do, the rest. We invited, it was John Smith the other day to come to a talk with us, the former Springbok rugby captain. And he says how they did, because when they won the World Cup, they were under pressure for the last few minutes and they were just defending like crazy. He says that when they were practicing, you almost create a lane to say, when a prof, you just got this lane. Don't worry about what's happening next to you. When so long as you make sure that they don't come past you, the other person does the same thing, the other person does the same thing, then in no time they actually don't go past anyone. But at times we have here, but what if they go past prof? So I'm going to cover for prof, but then you're not fully focused on your space. And I think if we just focus on your sphere of influence and control, and everyone does that in their space, you may find that the rewards will be a lot greater.
Thanks, my brother. Thank you so much. And exactly what we are doing here, as we are focusing on our area, which is leadership development, and that's exactly what we are doing here at Wild. Any thoughts, ladies and gentlemen? Any comments? Any question before we release Manzini? I see some nice comments there. Dr. Petri Bazibugo, very insightful indeed. Manzini Siyabonga Muhanti. Thank you, Mr. Manzini, very insightful eye-opener. Dr. Boyane Zwane, they expand that circle of influence. Thank you so much. And I've got my dear colleague of mine there who's using an iPhone that we are going to give him now or her. And I'll also ask that you let us know who you are so that we don't call you iPhone. We'll really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Prof. Prof, it's Tandiwe Gama. I'm not on my laptop today because I'm load shedding, so I'm using my iPhone. Thank you very much. And thank you to Manqoba for what I would almost call a crash course on leadership in the times we live in. He almost touched on every aspect and every element of leadership as we see leadership today. And thank you for those nuggets. And I loved also, I think when he started, he gave that quote about the lifetime of an opportunity. I wish he could put that on the chat because I think I missed part of it, but I would love to hear it again. In terms of my question, Prof, Manqoba, you spoke quite a bit about, as I'm saying, about leadership, and you touched on the roles that you play, be it in industry as a consultant, from the corporate space, where you have quite intensive experience in, also from the academic space and so forth as a business owner. And you touched on a very sort of topical issue, the issue of mental health and well-being, that is challenging all industries, and I would dare say not just in South Africa, across the world. And I know in South Africa, this question, yes, much as industries are moving into that space, but they say the pace seems to be quite reserved and quite slow. And it's surprising because from the experiences that we had since COVID, where COVID basically hit, most of the organizations really took up and were shaken up and started focusing on areas of mental health. We thought the pace would be faster than what it is, but my experience right now tells me that it is happening, but less so in the corporate space. And I think when you alluded also in terms of the initiatives that you've taken with working with clinical psychologists and so forth, it was more from your business space, more from what you teach in the class in the academic space. But I want you to sort of give a bit of your experience in terms of corporates, because corporates are hubs that most of us, when we wake up every day to go and work in, why is the issue of and the element of the challenge of mental health is seems to be sort of dragging? Your comments, your experiences there, particularly looking at corporates. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you so much for that, Tandega. I was with former Deputy President Umamu Pumzile Mlambo last week, and one of the things that she had mentioned that she prided herself in is her integrity and kind of being consistent, and kind of keeping her values irrespective of which spaces that she was in. And so the question I asked her, I said to her, Ma, in as much as I agree with what you're saying, part of the challenge that I'm seeing in corporate is that corporate has got predefined, sometimes when you interview someone, they say, no, they tick all the boxes, but no, yeah, no, this Manqoba guy seems good, but he's not a culture fit, you know. And they've created these things that they've now called the culture fit. And you then tend to, want to assimilate towards those things. And if you remove yourself from those things that have been set by that corporate, you now no longer a culture fit, and they work you out of the system. So you find females wanting to behave more like males, particularly if they're in a male dominated industry. You find younger executives wanting to just support the decisions that are made by the older executives, even if it may not be the right decision or the most efficient decision for that company. And so that's my view. That's my experience, that you're finding that because of the so-called culture fit, not a lot of people are willing to put their necks on the block and drive the change, because they've seen that those that have done it before tend to get sidelined because you're now disturbing the status quo. There are a few green shoots and few companies that I've seen that are taking this seriously, where it's not just a tick box exercise, where it's involved in where these programs are included in people's KPIs, and they have to spend a certain amount of time, and they have to provide reports to show how they are really taking this seriously. And really, up until more corporates do that, then it's just going to be lip service. But we know ukuthi umuntu, if into kushaya ephaketheni, if it impacts your bottom line and it impacts your pockets, you then tend to spend more time and invest more time in that. But I think there's also the need for us in such sessions to talk a lot more about it, and promote it, and talk about the importance of therapy, because going back to prof's provocation, particularly for the Black nation, we tend to think, I know, if you go to therapy, it's because you've got a problem, but sometimes you don't even need to wait until there is a problem to go to therapy. Sometimes it's good for you to stay at optimal level of functioning and by going to therapy. And we tend to use therapy by drinking alcohol, by doing all these other things that are actually very destructive, So I agree with you that there's still a very long way to go. Not a lot of corporates have taken to this wholeheartedly, but they certainly are corporates that I can definitely name that are doing this and doing it properly and investing a lot of money in it. And we're hoping that, they're gonna then, influence others in their sector to follow suit. But thanks for the compliment at the beginning, and thanks for the question. Oh, and then the quote was, the opportunity of a lifetime needs to be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity. The opportunity of a lifetime needs to be taken in the lifetime of the opportunity, because opportunities have got a finite lifespan, and if you don't take that opportunity in that lifetime, by the time you come back, it may have already passed. Maybe because I don't see too many questions. I see just one hand, Mokhant. So I'll just come to the question just now. Maybe just to elaborate on why I love that quote so much. So 2017, I'm in my second year of my MBA, and we have a course called entrepreneurship, and we have to identify a societal or business challenge and come up with a solution for it. So I identified unemployment, because at the time my younger brother was unemployed. So I felt responsible that, this boy has done, my brother has done, he's been disciplined and has passed well and so on, but he just can't find a job. So going into the MBA, it gives, I wanted to make sure that, I network with people, that are influential and get my brother a job. But when I got in, I realized that actually this has to be beyond your brother, And I think Umangetsu, Dr. Buyani commented earlier on about the importance of expanding, that sphere of influence. I said, no, man, it has to be beyond my brother. So I then, in the first year of the MBA, every case study that we did that spoke about recruitment, graduate programs, employment, and so on, I made notes. Oh, at RMB, this is how they do it. Or at Standard Bank, this is how they do it, and so on and so forth. So I created this my own model. And then in the second year for that entrepreneurship course, I then presented this model to the class. I was one of the youngest MBA students in my class. I got a standing ovation. And if you know MBA students, we all think we're smarter than the other. So for them to give me a standing ovation, I thought, okay, maybe I'm onto something here. So I used to attend Tuesday nights and Thursday nights, and then full day Saturday. And so this was a Tuesday night. So exuberance of youth, I pick up the phone, I call ENCA during the break, and I say to ENCA, look, I've got this program this business that I want to talk to you about, and can you give me an interview? I'd never ever been in the media before in my life. So I thought that it's gonna take 2 months for me to get the interview. So I've got enough time to build, to register the company and get the mentors and the mentees and the sponsors and all of that. ENCA says to me, oh, Mr. Zungu, you're in luck, because this week is the week, where they issue the unemployment rates, unemployment stats. And so they say, Mr. Zungu, you can come for an interview on Thursday. I say, which Thursday are you referring to? Say, no, this coming Thursday. I say, yo, I think I've bitten more than I can chew, So I call my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now. I say, yo, I think I've overstepped the mark here, And she says to me, look, dude, you've got, if you've got nothing now, this is just an idea in your head. If you don't do anything about this, you're still just gonna have nothing. If you go and you do this interview and you mess it up, you're still not gonna have anything. Or if you go and you do this interview, well, maybe something may come out of it, but you really are not gonna lose anything. If anything, you may gain, So I say, okay, cool, no. I then accept this interview. I go to ENCA Studios on the Thursday night, and I'd ask them for questions up front, and they said, no questions up front. It has to be authentic and all of that stuff. So I go to ENCA Studios at Hyde Park, and in the holding room, Ubaba Mthethonyati is in the holding room. At the time, he was MTN South Africa CEO, and he had just published results, so he was coming to talk about them. So he says to me, my boy, what are you here to talk about? So I tell him, and he says, oh, wow, that's a fantastic initiative, So he says to me, do you have a board? So I studied accounting. I know it's a good thing to have a board. So I said, yeah, no, Baba, I've got a board. Then he says, is it a statutory board or an advisory board? I didn't know what an advisory board was, but I knew that a statutory board is, very cumbersome. You have to register CIPC, directors, fiduciary duties, and all of that stuff that I studied in my commerce degree. So I then say to Baba Mteto, no, we've got an advisory board. And he says, who's the chair of that board? And I say, yo, who can I name? If Baba Mteto calls this person will have my back. Then I say, no, my uncle Usandile Zungu is the chair of this board, and then Baba Mteto says, no. Then if Sandile is on the board of your company, please can I also be on the board of this company? Remember, guys, this company doesn't exist, right? So anyway, I get the confidence that clearly, hey, I'm onto something here. I do the interview, I do it well, and then the next day, Alan Gray called me and say, ENCA calls me and they say, Mr. Alan Gray would like to have my number. I'm like, what do you mean, Mr. Alan Gray? Anyway, I said they can give him my number. They give him my number, and he says he'd like me to meet with this team in Rosebank, because at the time, Alan Gray was seen as a very elitist, kind of white-focused organization, and so they wanted to sponsor, my program for the work that we were doing. And so I went to then meet with the Alan Gray folks. And again, I have to think, okay, do I tell them before the meeting that actually this thing all exists in my head? Or do I just play along and then tell them at the end? I said, Chief, you are here now. Might as well go ahead, So I continue with the story. Within 20 minutes, we shake hands, we sign the contract. Alan Gray is going to fund my program. And only then do I tell them there's a slight problem, a non-disclosure. So I tell them that, look, actually, this thing exists in my head. I haven't registered the company and so on. And so the one colleague gets stressed that, oh my word, we've told the whole company that, we're sponsoring this company or this business. And the other colleague says, look, Mr. Alan Gray already, is backing this thing. We can't turn back now. So they got their commercial office to assist me to register with SARS and all of those things, get my Section 18A certificates and all of that, Long story short, as Prof was saying in the intro, we've created now over 300 jobs, Prof. In the what you were reading said 288. Now we're over 300 jobs. We've raised over 50 million rand, and I've now been, nominated by the World Economic Forum as one of the young global leaders because of the work that we do in unemployment, or at least reducing unemployment. So had I not taken my opportunity in that lifetime, Tandega, had I delayed and said, look, I'm not going to do this interview. I need to register the company first, make sure I've got the mentors, make sure I know where we're going to deliver the mentorship sessions from, and procrastinated and delayed, I probably wouldn't be speaking to you guys tonight, and so that's why I really love that quote and I really believe in it, because I feel like many of us have had situations where you see something being launched and you're like, I thought about this idea 5 years ago. Because really, the reality is that at any given time, there are thousands of people that have got the same idea as you. The only difference is who acts first, and so that's why I love that quote so much, Tandega. So thanks for provoking that story.
Thank you very much, Mangete. Thanks a lot, them. And thank you to you, Dr. Tandewe Gama. Thank you. The last one will be Mokhatsi. Mokhatsi, go ahead, but let me just ask Umanzini that you will respond to Mokhatsi, and then after that, if you can give us your closing remarks or your parting shots, and we'll close the session after that. Over to you, Mokhatsi.
Thank you so much, Prof. Thank you so much, Mr. Zungu. Very insightful indeed. My question is just a little bit of a follow-up in terms of the wellness. In terms of, I just want to find out the growth in terms of saying the AI. Is it bringing some threats in terms of growth, and particularly to say in the business of like the massages. Would there be any possible intervention that the people would resort to that will kill the industry of the human touch, where people then, still feel like going to attend the massages, just using the AIs, and that kill the whole entire industry?
Thank you for that question, Mohans. We always speak about the importance when I engage with my corporate clients, the importance of self-cannibalization, meaning that you yourself do something that cannibalizes your business. So one of the businesses that we own in our family, that we part own, is a mine called Seriti, which is the largest mine in the country. And when we saw that there is, the move towards green energy, we didn't just fight and defend coal, but we created an adjacent a company called Seriti Green, which is focusing on renewable energy. So now we still have our coal contracts, but we know that at some point they want to fizzle down. But when they do, we're not going to be caught with our pants down because we would have already started Seriti Green. So similarly with technology, I think as a country, we're still way behind many of the countries globally. I was speaking to someone at one of the big retailers, which I won't mention. They said to me, look, can I come and speak to them around how they can manage the transition, because they believe that at some point they won't need to have cashiers scanning our groceries, because as most of us have seen that have traveled globally, there's no cashier. You just go and you do it yourself, and you just you pick your groceries, you pay for them, you leave without speaking to a cashier. That's happening globally, and it's gonna be coming in South Africa. So as a retailer, you can either ignore it and pretend it's not going to come, or you can start planning for it. How do you reskill your people to make sure that when that happens, people don't lose their jobs? So similarly, as business owners or as employees, it's important for us to be as well versed about these technologies as possible, and then identify where, how you can reskill yourself to make sure that when that technology comes to, when people are now no longer looking at human beings for a massage, which I argue is still a very long way to come, in my view, still going to be 5 to 10 years, but start thinking about it now, and maybe you become the one who actually imports these machines. And in that self-cannibalization example that I did, you cannibalize your own business and you become the first to provide a dual offering where people can choose whether they want to be massaged by a robot or whether they might want to be massaged by a human being. Because the reality is, firstly, I've never even heard of robots massaging people, but I can actually picture it, and I think it would work. I imagine that robot would be, well trained, and almost the massage would be almost perfect, because all the coding is done in such a perfect way. So if it says, if you want a medium, they do medium. It's not hard, it's not soft, and so on. Whereas with human beings, sometimes depending on the person's mood, if they're not in a good mood, you may actually have a horrible massage from the same person that gave you a massage last week. So there is that threat from the technology, but it's also not something that we must just cry about or worry about or ignore. It's about how, firstly, we make ourselves still unique as human beings, but also see how we can start incorporating these technologies and kind of working in a hybrid sense, so that we don't lose kind of the businesses completely. I see a comment there that they already, those chairs that massage us, which is actually very true. Those chairs are there already, and so you can then look more kinds to say, I can maybe be the person that imports these, maybe imports them at a cheaper rate and makes it more accessible to people, and then you then start running that business. Maybe keep the one where there's a humans, because some people always prefer the human being, but create a subsidiary where, you know, it's just managed by kind of the robots, and you are able to play on both sides. So with that being said, I had said to Prof, I've got a hard stop at 30:30 because I've got another client meeting now. Thank you so much for the conversation. Thank you so much, Prof, for inviting me. As a person who speaks almost every day of their lives in various forms, I've realized that there are two types of people. There are energy givers and energy takers, you know, and the energy takers, after you engage with them, you are finished. You know, you feel like your whole soul has been removed because it was such a difficult conversation, you know. So this audience certainly has been energy givers. You know, it's 7:30, but I'm energized. I'm, you know, very excited and very, you know, energized, as I said. And so I thank you all for your comments and for your questions. And I do challenge you again that let this be your opportunity of a lifetime. You know, I hope one or at least one thing that I said will trigger you to go and, you know, influence your sphere of your sphere a lot better, to grow your sphere and impact more people than you already are impacting. And I'm sure at some point, as life has it, we will bump into each other physically, and we continue engaging. Should anyone be, you know, the people that were shy on the line that didn't ask the question, because I used to be shy, believe it or not. I will drop Prof my email address. In fact, Prof has already got my email address and my contact details, and Prof can share those, because I don't see. Oh, I do see the chat actually. Don't worry, Prof. I will drop that now. Should anyone want to engage beyond this, or whether it's asking a question or if it's just a follow up on something that, you know, you may think about tomorrow or in future times, because as I said, collaboration is so important. We're all leaders in our different spaces, and it's important for us to collaborate and to share ideas and work together. I will end there, Prof. I don't really have any, you know, smart closing remarks, but it's really to say we are the ones that we've been waiting for. There's no one else that will fix, you know, our situation. We are the ones that are going to fix it, but we need each other. You know, the more mature, more experienced colleagues on the line, you need us as the youngsters, but the youngsters, you need the more mature colleagues that you will learn from and get guidance from. You know, so at times in the working world, you see this intergenerational competition, which I think is absurd, because it's not really about which generation is smarter or quicker. It's really about us working together and creating a team that is you know, insurmountable, and a team that will be winning individually as companies, but also as a country. With that being said, I thank you very much, Prof. Thanks again.
Thank you, my brother. Actually, you've rescued me there because you've saved me when you've shared your own details to the platform, because we've taken a policy in the as well that we are not going to be sharing speakers particulars to individuals. We were nearly sued one day by a certain speaker that we shared his particulars to a colleague, and it was like, I got your details from Professor Majola. He was furious. So we've taken that decision, and we always say that I'm not a post box or postman. If there's anyone who wants particulars of a speaker, do it yourselves. Not think that you'll find it from Prof. Majola because of the policy you've taken. So at least Manzini has done it for you, and I'm glad that he has done it. Thank you very much, my brother. Anyone who was delayed, who came late, would not have really imagined that you came. I don't know, always don't want to use this word as a substitute, but that we are supposed to be addressed by Tumega Chaka, who couldn't make it because of health reason, and then he requested you to come. And you've done a great job, a wonderful job. Thank you so much. And indeed, we've learned so much tonight, and we respect you and we admire you. Thank you for your insightful presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much from my side. As you know, we meet every Wednesdays. Again, next week, let us meet for another powerful topic and also another powerful speaker who will be addressing us. Thank you so much. The session is adjourned now until we meet again next week. May God bless you and may God bless Africa. Thank you. Goodbye.